What's up, everybody? I am Robert, and you are listening to That Infernal Noise. This is my podcast. This is the first one we're going to be doing for 2021, and I just wanted to kind of get back into the groove of things. Um, Take a little bit of time, and as I'm recording this, it's the third. You should be hearing this the fourth or later, depending on when you actually listen to it. And I know my podcasts tend to get a little bit heavier and I get a little deeper into like my psyche and try to figure out my motivation for things and whatnot. And I'm still going to do that, but I think just based on this past year, based on 2020 and the whole hindsight is 2020 and all that stuff, I think it's more important for me personally to try to focus on the positive. 2020 was a bit of a struggle for a lot of people. And I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a struggle for myself as well and my family. I mean, we made the decision to essentially homeschool the kids, and my job afforded us the ability and opportunity to work from home as a way to mitigate risk and whatnot due to the whole COVID thing. And I mean, it's been great. It has in some ways, and in some ways, it's been kind of a beating. It was hard to make the transition at first, but overall, I think it's been very beneficial. I know a lot of people have struggled and failed through no fault of their own over these past 9 months or whatever since the shutdown began. If I'm being honest, I haven't really had that struggle. I've struggled mentally as far as like adjusting to things and being home as much as I have and whatnot. But comparatively, I've had it pretty good. My family's had it pretty good. Um, we haven't gotten sick or anything. To be honest, I've kind of prospered in this time. I don't know why that is. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a little bit of the survivor's guilt, I guess. I mean, not to that extent, but just in general. I feel kind of guilty that I've succeeded and my family personally has prospered in a time where so many people are suffering and so many people have had to deal with so much adversity. But at the same time, I think it's important for me and for my family to focus on that, to focus on the positive, and that we are still here. We have been rather lucky and, dare I say, blessed in a very trying time where people have had to deal with so much adversity. And because of that, I've decided to make 2021 my year of why not. I'm a big fan of Kevin Smith, podcaster, movie director, writer extraordinaire. And every time I watch his, I don't want to call it stand up because I don't think he would call it stand up, his talks or whatever. The most recent one being Silent but Deadly. In that special, he talks about a myriad of things. The most important quote that I have from that one is rather impactful to me. And every time I watch his stuff, I feel this motivation and this need to try to accomplish any and everything I've ever wanted. In one of his previous specials before this one, he had mentioned, the world's filled with a lot of why. Of course, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm butchering what he said. The world's full of why. And he himself tries to not be the why guy. He tries to be the why not guy. Everybody's going to ask you, oh, well, I want to start writing movies. Oh, I want to do a podcast. Why? I don't want to be the why guy. I want to be the why not guy. And in my life in general, I've tried to do that. Whenever friends have come to me and said, oh, hey, I want to do this. Okay, cool. What can I do to help? Or sometimes I've taken it upon myself to find out what I need to do in order to help facilitate what they want to do. I mean, I've dipped my toes in a lot of different ponds here and there. The podcasting started that way. Jimmy got me into it. Music I've always been interested in, but it just took a couple of people saying, "Hey, you should try this, you should try that. I really like the things that I've read, blah 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 blah." Bring me into the fold, and then all of a sudden, I'm off to the races. And I never really thought about it at the time, but it was I was terrified of all of those things. Starting the podcasting, starting to do music, everything. Any new jobs I've started, I've been terrified until this most recent one, oddly enough. I think subconsciously, whenever I got this new job, I had already kind of turned into the why not. It's just like, you know what? Fuck it. What have I got to lose? And I'm not saying anything negative about the company. The company's great, but it's one of those things where it's just, why not take a chance? I didn't know if it was going to be the best fit for me initially. It turned out to be a great fit for me. I've met a lot of cool people through this company and gotten to work with a lot of good people. But I didn't know how it was going to work out initially. Whenever I first started music, I didn't know how it was going to go initially. Before I started doing it, I had already met several artists, and the artists that I had met before I started doing the music part of it, whenever I was still just a fan, they were all super cool, super chill. I mean, everybody was just very down to earth and very real. And up until that point, I'd always seen artists and whatnot as these people that were on a higher echelon than we were, that they weren't real people and all that stuff. I've been to so many shows throughout the course of my life, and everybody always seemed, I guess, unattainable or like they're unreachable, and you can't interact with these people because they're up there and you're down here. And right before I started getting into music, I started going to more of the underground shows for hip hop and whatnot. And everybody had a juxtaposition from, I guess, the character that they played on stage or the character that they played on their albums or whatever the case was versus the person that they actually were. I met many great people because of that. People that I see at shows now or I'll talk to on Facebook now, and it's a cool conversation. It's not, "Oh, hey, man, what projects do you got going on?" It's, "Hey, man, happy birthday. How's the kids doing? How's the grandkid? Blah, 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 whatever." Like an old friend as opposed to an artist. And every single one of them has taken time to, whenever we haven't talked for a while, to mention something or say something that is just like, "Oh, yeah, I remember you whenever we blah, 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 blah," or "this show when blah, 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 blah." And I think that's really cool. And I think that goes with the why not aspect of it. All of them could be very standoffish and very like, "Oh, yeah, thanks, man," and then blow you off. And I haven't encountered that in many people in the underground. There's a lot of cool people. And in meeting all of those people, that's kind of motivated me this past year. I've seen some people I hadn't seen in a while. I've talked to some people I haven't talked to. And I've met some new ones. Got to actually hang out with a couple of cats that I knew of but didn't know per se. Well, one didn't know at all. And it kind of lit a fire under my ass, if I'm being honest. Because for me, it's different to be around musically creative people. I forget what it's like whenever I haven't been around them in a while. And that's not taking anything away from the normal creatives, the writers, the poets, whatever the case may be. It's not taking anything away from that at all. But in my experience, I've learned that music creatives, it seems like they don't turn it off. Everything is inspiration. Everything is motivation. They hear a couple of chords in a song or a couple of words and it triggers something in them. And I know it's happened to me, and I'm not on the consistent music creative level that they are. Where you're just always wanting to come up with something else, and you're always thinking of the next song you're going to record or the next lyric or verse or hook or whatever. And hanging out with everybody that I have this year, it well, it's really the past 2 years. Anyway, it's motivated me. I want to do more. I want to be creative again. I This past year I've done nothing but work basically. I'm passionate about podcasting. I haven't even got to listen to the majority of the podcasts that I listen to just because of how busy I've been. I haven't been able to delve into like a whole lot of new music because of how busy I've been work wise. And I think 2021 is going to be the year of I need to do that. I need to get back to that. I need to reignite my passions, reignite the things that I want to do. And I think a lot of us, as we get older, we lose sight of not only the things we want to do, but the things we're passionate about. I myself am passionate about Star Wars. If you know me, you know that. I geek out. I love the new trilogy, despite what everybody else thinks. I love the original trilogy. I love the prequel trilogies. I like The Mandalorian, what I've seen of Clone Wars, like across the board. I just love Star Wars. I love the expanding universe that it has. And I love the stories that they tell. But to a lot of people, that's nerdy, that's dorky, that's, oh, I can't believe you're geeking out about seeing Puppet Yoda in The Last Jedi. That was a cool moment for me. I lost my shit. I'm not going to lie. I did. I lost it because I grew up with Puppet Yoda. And I know that's splitting hairs because of the prequels and blah, 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 blah. I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into a nerd debate. But it was a cool moment for me. And I had my wife and two of my best friends there whenever I first watched it. And I fucking lost it. I got giddy. I got giddy like a kid because I saw Yoda and I just lost it. But I also, at that same time, felt, whether or not it was true, I don't know. I felt judged. I felt like I shouldn't react that way, like I should be a grown-up or whatever the case was. I don't remember exactly what I thought. I just remember there was a lot of negative going through my head at that moment. Well, after that moment. And it wasn't necessarily anything that anybody said or did or anything like that. It's just the normal hang-ups that we develop as adults. And that moment coupled with a moment that I had had a few years prior with my son, my oldest son. He's always been into like Transformers and the Godzilla type kaiju stuff or whatever. So I took him to go see Pacific Rim the first Pacific Rim, whenever it was in theaters. And it was just me and him. Before that, I had been kind of cynical and just very opinionated whenever it came to, oh, well, it's not going to look realistic and da-da-da. Just critiquing the hell out of everything instead of enjoying it. And I was sitting there watching the movie with him, and I started doing the same thing in my head. I didn't say it to him because he was enjoying himself. And I remember whenever it gets to that part where the main character is in his Jaeger fighting against the kaiju in the big climax. And just looking at my son, something told me to look over at Chris, and I just looked at him, and he is intently staring at the screen, and he's just got this giant smile on his face, and his eyes are bigger than his fucking head, it seemed like. And he was just so mesmerized, and he loved it. He just loved it so much because he was a kid, and he hadn't built up all the cynicism and all of the negative critique shit that we constantly do on a regular basis and don't think that we do it. Don't realize that we do it. It happens inherently, and we automatically go to it because we've been through more. And I decided at that moment that I was just going to enjoy things for what they were. I was going to be happy about the things that make me happy, to geek out about the things I want to geek out about. I get happy whenever there's a new Star Wars. I get happy whenever there's something Ninja Turtle related, Dragon Ball related. any of that stuff. I geeked out hard over the Broly movie because I guess the term's weeb now or whatever. I don't know. I'm still learning that from my kids and my niece. But stuff like that is cool to me. I get. I mean, shit. I'm looking in front of me right now as I'm recording this, and I have 3 shelves above my desk on the wall, and it's just Vegeta PVC statues, and there's a Broly and there's a Goku because I received those as gifts, but they're all Vegeta because I thoroughly because I identify with Vegeta. I always have. And then I look to the left of that, and there's a Rick and Morty poster. And above that, it's a Rat Pack poster. And then next to all that, there's a poster that I got from a show, Rides of the Riff Raff. And it's signed by the majority of the artists that were there that night. And then I look at my wall, and I have a ink blot styling pictures of Piccolo, Goku, Frieza, and Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, and there's one of Wolverine, and there's a Luke Skywalker. And I tell you all that because that shaped who I was. Or, excuse me, that shapes who I am. All of those things culminated, and we as adults lose sight of what shaped us, whether or not we realize it shaped us. I am fortunate in the aspect that I know the original trilogy shaped the person that I was going to become. Whether I wanted to admit it at the time or whatever, it did. I know it did. A lot of people wanted to be Han Solo, the bad boy badass that shot first. The girls always wanted to be Princess Leia because she was one of the first sci-fi heroines that was a legit badass and didn't really need anybody. I mean, yes, Luke had to save everybody in Return of the Jedi, but that's neither here nor there. But I always wanted to be Skywalker. Always. The guy that always believed in the good, even though he was surrounded by the darkness. And I know that's getting a little heavy or whatever, but that's kind of how I've always looked at it. I had a conversation with Niche at one point. I can't remember if it was around the time of The Last Jedi or if it was Force Awakens or hell, it might have even been Rise of Skywalker. But we were just talking like we always do. And I'm positing all of my musings that go through my head. She says she likes it, whatever I ramble about shit that I'm excited about. Why she is, I don't know, but it makes me love her a little bit more because I can be myself authentically. And I was talking about how I feel about Star Wars. You know, as a kid, I watched Star Wars and I wanted to be Luke Skywalker. I always wanted to be Luke Skywalker. He was just the coolest character to me because he came from nothing, or so he thought. He grew up in nothing, put it that way. He grew up in nothing, only to end up being one of the most important people in the galaxy. And ended up redeeming his father, who nobody thought could be redeemed. And ultimately brought him back to the light to stop the greatest evil that the galaxy had ever seen, etc., if you know the story. So I've always wanted to be Luke Skywalker at that point, that kid that was just looking to the stars and hoping to be something greater. And then as I got a little bit older, as a teenager, the prequel trilogy came out. The prequel trilogy made me want to be Anakin Skywalker. Not in the aspect that I wanted to be Darth Vader, but I identified with Anakin. You know, the little kid that came from seemingly nothing to end up being something greater than he ever thought he was going to be. Albeit to the dark side, but I could understand that as a teenager, struggling. The struggle that he had in episode 2 and episode 3. He struggled with who he was and making the right decision as opposed to the decision he wanted to make for himself. And he fucked that up a couple times. And I definitely knew that feeling as a teenager. You know, you're wanting to be on the good side. You're wanting to be in the light, and then you end up doing something that makes you question all that, and ultimately you go dark for a little bit. But then knowing all that and seeing all the bad that he did, and then knowing that he still does redeem himself at a certain point, albeit 20 years later, but he still does redeem himself, and that showed me it was never too late. And then, as an adult with kids, the sequel trilogy comes out, and everybody's critical for whatever reason, that it's female led, or Luke Skywalker was a quote unquote bitch, whatever. He would never do that. Based on the story that I know, all of that shit, I identified with Luke again. It was always a Skywalker. I don't know if that's some kind of delusions of grandeur, I guess. I don't know. But I identified with Luke again because I'm an adult. I have kids. I watch the movies with my kids. I got to share that with them. Then at the end of Force Awakens, Rey's essentially confronting Luke and reaching out with his lightsaber. And that's how the movie ends. And everybody was wondering the entire time what Luke was going to do, how he was going to react, whatever. And then at the beginning of The Last Jedi, you see him take his lightsaber and throw it over his shoulder because he didn't want anything to do with that life based on everything that had happened. And as an adult that's been through a lot of shit, I again found myself identifying with Luke Skywalker. Yeah, that's not the hero that we all grew up with, but at that point we didn't know the life that he had led or the things that had happened. And as the two movies go on, you find out more and more why he made that decision. And ultimately, same as Vader, Luke ends up redeeming himself for that moment where he wanted nothing to do with it. He wanted nothing to do with the responsibilities or anything like that. And I myself found myself in that same situation where I didn't want to deal with the responsibilities. I just want to give up, and I want to get away and not be a parent for 5 minutes or whatever the case may be. And I haven't always done right by my kids or my wife. And I'm not afraid to say that. They know that, and I've had many conversations with my children and my wife about that. That I feel inadequate at times, and that I feel like I'm doing more harm than good in the relationships at times. But then there's moments that I look at everything and I just realize, you know what? I know I'm doing the best I could. I know I'm doing the best I could because I am here. I've never abandoned my children. I never would abandon my children. And ultimately, I've never done anything to distance myself from the children. I picked poorly occasionally, made poor decisions whenever it came to putting my own wants and needs above the needs of my family. I'll be the first one to admit it. But ultimately, I've always been here, and I always will be here because that's my job as a dad. And in the past 9 months, I feel like I've gotten so close to my kids. I know, especially the older two, because they talk more and they're into more things and whatnot. Like I can look at Chris and Kaylee and I can see that yes, I am their father. I'm their father first and foremost, and I have always told them that. But I do think that there is a friendship there as well, and not in the aspect of, oh, they can do whatever the hell they want or anything like that, because I'm a strict son bitch. And anybody will tell you that. Everybody has said that I'm way too strict. I think I'm doing it right because I've seen the results, and I feel like I have a close relationship with my children because of it. Because I'm honest, because I treat them not as children mentally, but I treat them like they're responsible and can handle information and can process information the same way an adult can, because they can. And I give them the opportunity to be that, to make their own decisions and whatnot. And I'm not going to say I don't steer them, and they have known that I steer them one way or the other, and I give my honest opinion the same way I would give anybody else. Because I'm not of the opinion that you should lie to people to make them feel better. And that even goes for my children. As much as I want to take pain away from them and as much as I want to shelter them, I can't, because that's not being a responsible parent. Being a responsible parent is preparing them for the world. And 2020 has taught me that you don't know what the fuck is coming. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, a year ago at this time, none of us would have guessed that we would be where we are as far as the virus and how things have changed. And I mean, how many restaurants and music venues and all these places that have gone out of business because of essentially one thing happening. It made me have a deep appreciation for having a job in this time, and not just having a job, but thriving and prospering with that job. This has been one of the busiest years I've seen in a very long time, and I stayed busy the entire time, but I thrived in the midst of chaos. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, there's I know I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people that have done the same. And I'm just counting my lucky stars that I was one of the fortunate ones. I'm not one of the ones that have lost a ton of people on either side or anything like that. There's been adversity, and this time last year I was mourning the death of a childhood friend. And that still affects me. And now there's been other deaths of family friends that I grew up with since then. And death has a profound effect on me as well. All of this, the deaths, the prosperity, just the state of the world in general, has given me a lot of perspective this past year. I'm past the point of taking anything for granted anymore. I have my children, I have my wife, I have friends, been making new ones, and having them, whether or not they realize it, motivate me and make me want to do more and to put something out and to be creative and get those juices flowing again, get psyched about something, just get into something again, besides just head down working. That's important too. That's very important to me. My work ethic is very, very important to me, and that's because of Grandpa. But I've watched too many people just waste their life working. And not that it's a waste, because it provides for my family. So I'm not saying it like that. It's very important. But it is also very important to me that I have a creative outlet. And as that creative outlet, there's a lot of things that I want to do. I enjoy podcasting. My friends and wife would probably say I enjoy it because I enjoy listening to my own voice. And that is probably true because I'm somewhat of an egotist at times, but I enjoy conversation. And I know this is a one-sided conversation because I can't hear people's responses back to me, etc., but it has the ability to open a dialogue. And the reason I know that is because whenever I listen to podcasts, I have conversations with my wife. I'm like, oh, well, I heard on Rogan that da-da-da-da-da, or Bert Kreischer talked about this, Tom Segura and Christina talked about this, or Ryan Sickler, Josh Wolf, whoever, they talked about this on their podcast, or mentioned this, or something funny, or whatever. But the point is, it opens a dialogue. And we have a conversation, and then that just adds to our conversing. So even if it doesn't open a dialogue with the person I'm listening to, it opens a dialogue around me. And that's what I want to do. I like people thinking. I like people conversing with me or with each other or whatever. And that's what I aim to do with this time. I'm not going to change the world overnight. Nobody can. But there was a quote a very long time ago that I ran across. I think it was attributed to the Dalai Lama, and they proved that that wasn't true. But whatever, that doesn't take anything away from the quote itself. The quote itself is, Be the change you want to see in the rest of the world. And what I want to see is I want to see positivity. I get tired of all the negative shit on social media, and there's always shit talking, and everybody's just got something negative to say. And it's just in life in general. Everybody gravitates towards the negative as opposed to the positive. And I'm not going to say I'm not guilty of it myself from time to time. But overall, I try to be positive. I don't post negative stuff on social media anymore. I was guilty of that at one point, 100%. So, matter of fact, that's probably the only thing I posted about. But now, each day, I try to find a motivational quote or some positive affirmation or something and share that. I also share pictures of my wife, my kids, myself, because that's what's important to me, my family. And not just those in my house, my family in general. Because I want to put more positivity into the world. I don't want to put negativity in the world. I don't want to be a why guy. Why this, why that, why any of it. If you tell me that you want to do something, cool. How are you going to make that happen? And not to discourage you, but to make you actually think, what is it going to take to make that happen? Like me, for the past 2-3 months, I've been formulating. I've been looking into things and trying to figure out exactly how I'm going to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish. None of which I'm going to discuss here until they're done, whatever, because I can't stand seeing, oh yeah, big things coming and blah, 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 blah. It's our year, bullshit, because I did it too. But I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to say I'm going to do this podcast every week because I don't know that I am. I don't know for sure any of it. I know what I want to do. I know that I have a goal to do. And I plan on trying to follow through as much as possible with that. I hope I do. I hope this year is as good to me as 2020 was. But I also hope it's better for everybody that had the adversity, that had the trials and tribulations last year. I just want it to be a good year. I want everybody to be happy. The least amount of death we can get away with would be great. The least amount of adversity we could get away with, great. Because I think everybody deserves a break. We all deserve to breathe a little bit easier. We all deserve to sleep a little bit better, not having to worry about, well, what the hell's going to happen tomorrow? And I hope everybody can make 2021 the year of why not. If you want to write that book, start writing it. You want to do a podcast? Buy a mic. You want to record an album? Start writing, motherfucker. Because that don't write itself. There's nothing that we can't do. Any of us. And we all let the negative shit affect us. The negative opinions affect us. I, for one, am going to try to do my part to not be that anymore. And I hope everybody else does too. And if you feel the need to be negative, take a step back. Just take a step back and look at it objectively. Was there something in your life at some point that you wanted to do, that somebody discouraged you, either passively or directly, and it prevented you from doing it? And if so, do you regret not doing it? I know I have regrets. Well, maybe not regrets, but there's things I want to accomplish that I haven't. Because I let things get in my way. I let criticisms get in my way. And all that shit. And I'm going to do my best this year to not do that. To not get in my own way. To not let other people get in my way. If something makes me happy, I'm going to enjoy it. If something tickles my fancy and I decide, hey, I want to do this, I'm going to do it. Not because I'm having a midlife crisis. Although I'm sure people would argue against me saying that. Because I've spent too much time worrying about things that are inconsequential. in the grand scheme of things. What's consequential is that I'm happy. What's consequential is that my wife and my kids are happy. My friends are happy. Family's happy. All that stuff. That's all I care about. Everybody's happy. Everybody's healthy. And I hope everybody else thinks the same. So with that all being said, this has been That Infernal Noise. I think it's episode 5. Maybe. Everybody be nice to yourself. And be nice to each other. Because especially right now, it's really important. Later, guys.